Good morning. Welcome to day 3 of Tinkercad Bootcamp. Today we're going to go over the group tool, how to select objects, how to change the colors of grouped objects, and how to make holes. On our skee-ball machine, we're going to make this ramp right here, and I'm going to show you guys how to cut the walls off at an angle. Let's get started. We're going to start by making a house. So let's drag a box out there and put a roof on top of it. Now remember, Tinkercad doesn't know you want to stack these, so we have to come in here and manually stack them. And we do that by raising it upwards. This looks right, but let's look at it from a few different angles. Here, I can see that my roof is too high. This time around, I'm going to look at my dimensions. My dimensions are these numbers. This one tells me that the bottom of my roof is 30 millimeters off of my work plane. The height of my box is 20 millimeters. So I need to drag this down until this number reads 20. That means the bottom of my roof is at the exact same level as the top of my cube. Now I know the height is perfect, but let's look at it from the top view. I need to shift this guy back. I'm going to use the up arrow key and that'll send it backwards. And I'm pretty sure that is good. Let's look at it from a few different sides. Everything looks good. So this is our house. Let's say we want to move it. You're going to click and drag, and look what happens. The roof stays put, but our cube moves. That's a problem. We need to group these guys together or glue the two objects together. The tool's name is the group tool. It's up here. It's a square fused with a circle. Now, no matter how many times you click it or how hard you click it, nothing will happen until you select both objects. Here's how you select two or more objects. You can just click on an object and it selects it, but to select more than one object, there are two ways to do it. One, with your left hand, click shift. With your right hand on your mouse, you're going to click on your roof and then click on your cube. And you can see there's a blue outline around both shapes. That means they're both selected. Here it says shapes parenthesis 2. That means two shapes are selected. The other way you can select multiple objects is by left click and dragging. This is I call it the selecting square. Just make sure both shapes are at least touching it or are inside the square, and then let go. Both shapes are selected. Now we can group them. So this is one solid object. They move together, but now the whole entire thing's red, and I don't want that. I want my roof to be green. To change that, I'm going to come up here, click solid, then click multicolor, and that turns it back to its original colors. If you want to change the color of a shape now, we actually need to ungroup it. See, if I wanted to make the roof orange, I can't do that in its current state. So I need to ungroup it. That means now it's two separate shapes. And then I'm going to click on my roof and make my roof orange. Then I'm going to left click drag, select both shapes, group it, color button, multicolor, and we are golden. Next, we're going to go over holes, and if you know how to group objects, this should be a breeze. You probably already noticed that there are two shapes that aren't like the rest. These guys have lines going through them. That means that they are set as, instead of creating a solid cylinder, it will take away material in the shape of a cylinder. It'll create a cylindrical hole. Right now, yes, we have the hole set on top of our block, but that hole is not carved out yet. To actually carve out that hole, we need to group the two shapes together. So you can either click shift, click on your cylinder and your block, and then group it, or you can just left click and drag, selecting square both those shapes, and then click group. And look at that. Now we have a hole in our block. Now you're not just limited to square and round holes. That would be kind of boring. You can actually turn any of these shapes into a hole. Let's say I wanted a star-shaped hole. Right now the star is solid, and I know that because it's yellow. And also, if you look here, solid is selected. To turn it into a hole, you click hole. And then of course you group them together. Now, you might never need to know what I'm about to show you, but I think it's worth knowing. If you ever needed to create a really weird shaped hole, you can make it out of solid objects. And then you can group those solid objects together, turn them into a hole, and then group that to your solid object to carve out that hole. Pretty simple, right? Now we're going to get started on our skee-ball machine. Specifically, we're going to make this ramp first. We're going to make a shape called a fillet because they don't give us a ramp. A fillet is made by grouping a cylinder with a cube. Now, the cylinder currently will not work. One, we need to crank those sides up to 64 to make it a smooth circle. Secondly, we need to make the diameter or the length of the cylinder twice that of our cube. Our cube is a 20 by 20 by 20 cube, so this guy needs to be 40 by 40. I'm going to scale it upwards. To scale the object, again, we click shift. Then we click on this node and drag it until one of our dimensions reads 40. Now we need to drag this cylinder into our cube so that it just barely kisses this corner and this corner. And that will work. We're going to left click drag and then click Control G or just the group button. That groups two objects together. So this is our fillet or our ramp. Here's how it is helpful in other 3D models. It's only going to take a few seconds. So the fillet turns this sharp corner into a nice smooth radius. Now I'm going to click Control Shift G to ungroup it. Drag this guy out here, then I'm going to click D to drop it to my work plane, get rid of this guy, and now we're going to attach this to our skee-ball machine. Now, the skee-ball machine I've been making with you guys is over here. If I just click and drag it, what happens? It comes apart. Why is that? Because it's not grouped together. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to group it while it's over here. Actually, no, we don't need to do that. Here's a life hack. If you select all your objects, you can actually move them as a unit or as a group without them being grouped together. See, they're still separate pieces. But we do in fact want to group this together. So let's left click drag, group them all together. Now let's work on these walls first and then we'll worry about the fillet. I want to cut these walls off at an angle, and here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to drag this wedge out here. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Then I'm going to raise it up to about the top of my pinball machine, and I don't want it to be a solid object. I want it to be a hole. So let's just morph this to our needs, basically. I'm thinking that looks good. Yep, let's group it. Now, with really complicated or complex objects, it's going to turn red. It's going to outline red for a long time. That's just because it's loading. Don't do anything, just let it sit. Now, if your object is red for like a super long time, click refresh and come back to it, and that will probably solve your problem. So now we're going to make the ramp for our skee-ball machine. And again, we're going to use our fillet for that. I'm going to scale it down. So I'm going to click shift and drag this node down. And I want to move this fillet over here, but if I click and drag it, it's going to screw up my object. That's because it's really far away and those nodes are really big. So here's what I need to do. I need to click out of there, literally click anywhere but the fillet, get rid of those nodes, and then I'm going to click and drag that fillet. Now my nodes pop up. That's great. That's what I want because I want to make this wider. I want to make it fit the runway of my skee-ball machine. I actually want to shrink that height down some. Let's call that good. Next, I need to figure out how high should I raise it. I'm not going to estimate it. You might be right. You also might be wrong. To make sure that you're not wrong, we need to figure out what the height of my runway is. Now, there's not a node that shows me what the height is, and that's because this object is grouped together. So I need to ungroup it. Click ungroup again until this is a separate object. So my runway is how high? It's 10 millimeters high. I'm going to regroup these by selecting them all and then clicking Control G. Now it's one solid object, and I need to raise my fillet up 10 millimeters. Then we will push it back into our skee-ball machine, double check that it's not sticking out on our walls, and call it good. What do we need to do? We need to group it. So select everything and group.